Every week we do a Q&A with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community to find how they persevered, how they innovated, how they built communities, and how they found solutions. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Welcome to the Nametags Chat Podcast. Today we have Mike Schlappi, who is a four-time medalist in the Paralympics, wheelchair basketball player, 2 gold, 2 silver, 2-time world champ, wheelchair basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, Massachusetts. So in the Basketball Hall of Fame, Utah top 50 athletes of the century. He's a great guy. He's been a friend for a while. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Chris. Thanks for that kind introduction. I asked my mom why she doesn't say all those things, and she says because she knows me. So I appreciate you making that kind introduction.
Well, the other thing that I had read, and I didn't know if it was still true or not, was that you were the only wheelchair basketball player who competed in 4 successive Paralympics. Is that still true?
You know, I don't think it's still true, but I am quite certain I was the first. So, because obviously I hit those early games, back in 88 through 2000. So, yes.
Yeah, and you were saying, as we were waiting, you were saying that it's going to be 45 years for you in a wheelchair right now, and you're going to turn 60. So you're 15, if my math is correct.
Yes.
Wow, 45 years. Did you know? Like, I mean, I remember somebody saying to me when I was in the hospital back in 1988, after I broke my back, they said, you won't be in a wheelchair for more than 10 years. They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you think you'd be in a wheelchair for 45 years?
I didn't know, but the spinal cord is pretty complex. And I know they're trying to figure it out, but no, I had no idea. I've been in a chair, in sports terms, 3/4 of an entire game. So yeah, 3/4 of my life I've been sitting on my rear end. So it's been a long time, but it's been a good time.
That is really interesting too, because I remember at one point somebody asked me, when's your half-life? And that was half of my life walking, half of my life in a wheelchair, which for me was in 2009. I think I'd done the math and it was actually March 13th of 2009. But so you've gone from half-life to a third of your life to now a quarter of your life.
Yes.
Walking. Yeah. Do you celebrate those demarcations at all?
This is a real encouraging conversation we're having.
No, it's really, I mean, for me, it was interesting to look back on it and say, okay, wow, this has been half of my life. And it's sort of like, what's the celebration? What are you going to do? How can you celebrate? Because obviously, tragic event.
Yes.
But you've done some absolutely amazing things too.
Yeah, it's weird. So I got hurt on Veterans Day, and every year that rolls around, it's kind of a day of somberness a little bit, but it's become more a day of gratitude for me. I'm still alive, life's good, so I don't sit and get all bummed about it. It is what it is. And I was throwing a curveball and I've hit a few and missed a few. But I'm very blessed to be alive in a wheelchair that long. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Mine was December 20th, so 5 days before Christmas.
Oh, joy.
And it's sort of one of those weird days that I think I can't quite make full sense of what the day is. And because in some ways it's a tragedy, in other ways it really is a celebration. Yeah. As you're saying, because I never would have been the best in the world at anything. And I became the best monoskier in the world. I mean, and this is similar to you in some ways, in that I'm a higher level injury. And back in 94, I was able to win the downhill and beat all the monoskiers in the world, which in a lot of ways is about the ability as opposed to the disability, which is part of what we're trying to heighten. So they talk about you as a class 1. Is that a 1 point in basketball? Can you describe what that means?
Yeah. So as you know, Chris, you and I have similar injuries.
Right.
So we don't have all our core muscles, which makes that all the more unbelievable what you did in a monoski, by the way. But yeah, so they give us a classification Then they put a team on the floor. And like if you're an amputee that's got all your core muscles and stuff, you might cost your basketball team 4 points. I cost our team 1 point. And you get to only put 15 points on the floor. So there's a mix and match of disabilities. And so I like to think that as a class one, I was one of the best, class ones in the world for quite a few years. But yes, your disability definitely has to do with, your classification and how they use you in wheelchair basketball.
Well, I mean, but it's also, so yeah, I mean, obviously you were good, right? I mean, you're in the Hall of Fame. So you're pretty good at what you did. But at one tryout, you were the fastest guy on the court, right? 30 people trying out.
Wow, you must have did your homework. I just thought I was somebody who knew what yes. So they had some drills that we would do, spinning and pushing. And, I was able, maybe I had my tires pumped up, I don't know, but I was able to do some drills as quick as some people that I wasn't supposed to be able to do them with. So, yeah. My dad was a basketball coach. I couldn't let him down,
That's so you started playing basketball as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And then you had your injury, and then you got back into wheelchair basketball. How did you get back into wheelchair basketball? Because that transition, especially, back when you had your 45 years ago. I mean, so 45 years, were you starting back in like an E&J, like stainless steel?
Oh yeah,
Pounder
scars to prove it. Yeah, armrests, big front tires, metal spokes. Yeah, I just got hurt, Chris, and I love sports, and I realized they still had sports, and it started to feel a big part of that identity that I'd lost.
Yeah.
And it kind of helped me put myself back together, and it became a passion. And I found out they had national teams and international teams. And so at first, I will be honest, I'm like, no, I'm not hanging out with a bunch of slow, disabled people on the basketball court. But I found out fairly quickly that there were a lot of good athletes out there. And so it just became part of my world. And it really was very therapeutic for me.
Was there a local team? Were you able to go to like an open gym, or how did that end up working out?
Well, I played on my own in the churches and at the high school. But I would practice with the Utah team. The first team I ever played on, they were called the Rim Riders. And now we're the Wheeling Jazz, Utah Jazz. And I coach the Wheeling Jazz now. But anyway, I played on a team in LA, a team in Phoenix. But yeah, they have teams in different states around the United States that are all part of the National Wheelchair Basketball Association. So it's out there. I'm just grateful that some people recruited me and believed in me and helped me get the right chair, because as you know, equipment is a big part of sports in a wheelchair. So yeah.
Well, especially you probably were not the fastest back in that 50-pound E&J chair. But as you got a better chair, the equipment helped you. I mean, not that everybody else didn't have similar chairs, but it probably helped you as a higher level injury more than some of these guys who had full range of motion and all that stuff. The first time I went out, I got on a basketball court and got a ball. I thought, okay, all right. I mean, I know how to do this. And I kept just drilling the front of the rim.
Yep.
Like boom, boom, boom. It was one of those that was one of the more frustrating things, that it seemed like I couldn't get it over the top of the rim.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a Hall of Famer. Did you have the same experience that I did, or were you good right away?
No, I did the exact same thing, because I played so much on my feet. Yeah. And I was just getting into high school, and it's all about the legs and the hips and the footwork. The first shot I took, same thing, Chris, fell 5 feet short, and I was bummed out. And my dad knew it and started using my wrists and hands a little more, get a little momentum as you push the wheelchair, get a little momentum, that helps. But yeah, it's totally different shooting, sitting down with just your arms versus standing up with your legs.
How much of the interaction was there between you and your father on the basketball side? You said he was a basketball coach, but it's a little bit different. It's the same sport, but it's a little bit different. How much was he able to help you out?
He he didn't help me so much in the wheelchair game, but he was my coach all the time on my feet. And so that all transitioned, passing, shooting, position. It is like you said, the same game. We just use tires instead of gym shoes, and it's a little different. But my dad never coached me in wheelchair basketball, but we were all about basketball in our family. He was a high school basketball coach. I had brothers and sisters that played college. He would follow me around the world at the Paralympic Games. And so it was hard for him. When I got hurt, it really was very difficult on my dad, because I was kind of like his prize child, getting into my glory days and then gone. And so it was hard.
A bit of a transition, that's for sure. One of the things they talk about with you, though, was your court vision and your positioning, particularly defensive positioning. And that, I would imagine, is something that came from growing up with your father and knowing sort of the flow of the game, because the flow of the game is the same, right? Even though you get 2 pushes before you have to dribble, you don't have to dribble the whole time. I mean, some people do, but I'd imagine your basketball sense, or what they call like your basketball IQ, came from your father and transitioned pretty well, didn't it, to the wheelchair game?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Passing, court position, shooting, the mental part of the game, understanding the clock. Yeah. No, that was all semi well ingrained in me, even at 15 years old. But there's no doubt. I mean, a lot of times people will get hurt and they've never played basketball before, and they come out and we teach them and give them a chair, and they figure it out and they become good. But it does help that I played ball since I was 4 and 5 years old. It really is the same game. It's just in a wheelchair, you don't have lateral movement, and you like you said, I can stop another person from going where he wants to go. Where in able-bodied basketball, if somebody wants to run across the court, they can run across the court. So, it started when I was young, and it transitioned very naturally for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and being a class 1, in a lot of ways, you often assume that is the person who is getting in somebody's way, right? That you're effectively like a road cone out there. Sometimes it sounds like you were not a road cone, but sometimes that's the role of the class 1 is, okay, you get in the way and let the good guy get open and go score.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a little bit of that, hey, locally, I've scored 20 and 30 points plenty of times. But when you start talking international Olympic stuff, if I chip in my 8 or 10 points and set some good picks and play some good defense and throw a few assists, I'm a little bit more of a role player at the international level as a class 1 than I am like a star player, which you might be at your local level. So, yeah.
Is it more of a strategic game in wheelchair basketball than like regular basketball, where I mean, it is a fair amount of space that you have to get around somebody, as opposed to kind of getting a little window of opportunity like in the NBA or something like that.
The wheelchair, the biggest difference in a wheelchair is, like I said, you can't move laterally, and you're kind of always getting in each other's way.
Right.
So if you can picture a defender going out to guard the 3-point line, well, when he goes out to guard the 3-point line, I can now stop him from going back under the basket, the defensive guy. So there's what they call pick and roll, where you use your wheelchair, you hold them out, you roll to the basket, and we create a lot of 5-on-4s, 4-on-3s. Transition basket, is very important. But in wheelchair basketball now, 3-pointers are part of the game. I don't know if it's more complex because of the chair, but it's actually more simplified, that most of the game is all about pick and roll. It's not a one-on-one game. In the NBA, they might give a couple guys on any team the ball and let them go do their thing and they can score. That's not the case so much in wheelchair basketball. You have to work as a team.
Right. And that's what I was asking really about, the idea of it being more strategic in the team play. And we do this and there's this play. And when did you find out that you were good? You said you started working on your own you're in the gym by yourself, you're at the church by yourself, and then you start playing with these with the local group. When did you realize that, hey, you might really have a chance, or did you realize right in the beginning?
I didn't know what to expect. I went out and most of them were adults, 20s, 30s, even in their 40s. And I fairly quickly realized, oh, I'm as fast as you. I can shoot as good as you, but I was young. I was small. I was a little bit intimidated. And so I just fit in, did the best I could. And they pretty quickly realized, oh, this little kid over here with dark hair, he can make some shots. And they started to trust me. And, I grew, and then I got into high school and then college. And so it was just kind of an evolution, but I definitely didn't dominate at first, but I realized I can do this. I can hang with these older people. And so it was fun.
Was there a college program? Because there are college programs now. Was there a college program when you went through or not?
There were not, Chris. I actually had to pay for my own way to college. Can you believe that?
Oh, I'm sorry, the travesty.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing now. These young kids that play on these junior teams, they go to colleges, U of I, U of A, whatever, Alabama, whatever. And they get scholarships and they're trained from when they're young, and they travel and their parents follow them around. They have fundraisers. It's the juniors game is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, they're playing nationally and sometimes even internationally at a really young age.
Yeah. And you can play wheelchair basketball at a high level, well into your 30s. And like an able-bodied person, not so much, maybe a few.
Right.
But in a wheelchair, maybe it's just to use your arms. I don't know, but you can play a little bit longer at a high level in wheelchair basketball. Yeah.
There's not the pounding that you have, like the leg pounding of the
Yes.
knees, the hips, the ankles, that kind of thing. But anybody who's gone out and played wheelchair basketball, if you have not played in a while, your hands turn to hamburger.
Yeah.
Really quickly, because it's all starting and stopping, and you're trying to grab the push rings and they're heating up. And
Yeah.
what goes for a wheelchair basketball player? It's not going to be your knees. It's not going to be your ability to elevate, I'm assuming.
Right. It's just age, and you start to slow down and weaken. But yeah, like you said, blisters and injuries are part of the game. Shoulders, we all know shoulders. Injuries are part of the game. I like to joke and say we're all on the disabled list, but it's just like in wheelchair, like this is like an everyday wheelchair.
Right.
The wheels are straight up and down. It's just an everyday chair. But when you play basketball, the wheels slant out. It's called camber. And that helps you turn quicker. And it also protects your fingers from becoming even more hamburger. So yeah, the chairs are very important, but I would say it's the shoulders over time, or just the motivation to keep playing. Tom Brady, it's unbelievable to me that he can be playing quarterback in the NFL at age 45. I mean, my gosh, is he ever going to lose his testosterone? I mean, that's unbelievable to me. So yeah,
and he told us he was going to do that.
Oh yeah, he told his wife he was going to do that.
Yeah, well, that might be an entirely different discussion. I think they're having a discussion right now, but
I think so too.
I think that might be happening. How much, you were talking about the camber, and some people might not know, how many degrees of camber do you have? Because I mean, the ability with those chairs, like I was talking to Elena Nichols, and she was demonstrating that you can do this, that you can do a 360 in your basketball chair without actually touching the hand rings.
Well, yeah, so everyone's different. Now they have, so the wheels, the camber, it can be anywhere from very slight camber, a couple of degrees, to very extreme camber, like 16 or 18 degrees.
Right.
And there's advantages to both, but that camber, it's not going to help you speed straight ahead, but man, you turn quick without falling out. You have straps and wheels in the back, so you don't fall over backwards. And so, unless you have enough balance, you don't worry about all those straps, but I needed straps. So anyway, the camber's important. Those chairs, you can just spin, you can literally almost spin them with your hips. Yeah. You can just get them spinning. It's such an advantage. I mean, the game has progressed so much, but it has progressed with, it would be like, Chris, like playing basketball in high heels. 30 years ago trying to play basketball in, business shoes or whatever. And so it's a big difference to be in a sports chair. They have tennis chairs, basketball chairs, as you know, racing chairs. So yeah, but the basketball is the same. The hoop's the same. The court's the same. Referees still have a jump ball. All that's the same.
Right.
But the equipment is important. Yeah.
Well, and the equipment helps you. I remember, we're talking about the first time out there hitting the front of the rim, and then just the coordination of trying to dribble, and you end up dribbling it off your wheel or dribbling it off your foot or those kinds of things. And then feeling so static too, that, okay, you catch a pass. Well, I need to move. Hold on a second. Now I need to push in order to move.
I've only got one hand. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one hand. But to watch wheelchair basketball as somebody who uses a wheelchair every day, to me, it's mind-boggling how fast you guys are, how seemingly it almost seems like you're not really pushing in order to gain this space. It almost looks like, to the outside person, it almost looks like you guys are running. You were probably part of that, a bit of that progression, right? Going back from the original chairs that you were in to some of the lighter, faster chairs that are more maneuverable. It's got to be weird because the equipment was happening at the same time that you were getting better as an athlete and progressing as well. Did you see one versus the other, or did they just work in concert?
Oh no, I was in those old E&Js you were talking about without any camber. And I'd go to practice and take the armrests off. And then I'd push and hit my thumbs and big scars. So I was definitely in that transition. And yeah, the equipment was huge. And the game has come so far. And it gets in your blood. You know how sports are. It doesn't matter if you're in a wheelchair on your feet, competing and getting yelled at by your coach. And sports is sports. And wheelchair sports are awesome. And I did get to see them go through sort of their infancy up to now. I mean, you were talking about dribbling a basketball. It used to be kind of like you'd put the ball in your lap, you'd push, and then you'd dribble. Now, somebody can dribble and push.
Yeah. And
they can dribble and push as fast as if they didn't even have a basketball and were just pushing. They get that skilled with the ball and the push and the dribble and flipping it over. Yeah, it's behind the back. It's impressive. We don't have between the legs though, Chris. No dribbling the ball between the legs.
Well, it's good to hear that there's still something out there.
That'll be
for the next generation, right?
Next generation.
What was it like when you made your first Paralympic team? This is back in '88, right? This is Seoul,
yeah.
which is really important because Seoul was the first venue that hosted both the Olympics and the Paralympics. I mean, granted, you had like Rome back in 1960, but sort of in the modern times, you had Seoul that hosted the Olympics and then hosted the Paralympics the way that we do now, 2 weeks later.
Same city, same venue, same. Yeah, it's. I mean, in your soul, it makes you feel proud. Like, whoa, I went from being disabled. My dad never thought I'd play again. And now I'm playing at something way beyond high school or even college. And so it's kind of a pride thing of this is really cool. And it was in its infancy. I was a student at Arizona State and I was very young. I tried out, I made the team, and you're sitting there.
You think you were going to make the team?
I wasn't sure, but I had a good camp and they took a chance on me. And I remember sitting there and they're reading the 12 names. And, there's 5 or 6, we're going to make the team, the stars. And then I got to my name and I heard my name. That was very cool. I was like one of the youngest. I might think I was the youngest on the team. And so it was just it's just a neat feeling to represent your country. It's different. There's something about, there's something about having USA, red, white, and blue. You're not representing Utah, and I'm not representing Mountain View High School in Orem, Utah. It's the Olympics. It's neat. And then, the flags and the people speak all those different languages, and you go back and you eat in the Olympic Village with cool people from other countries. You know, I'm telling the people that are watching, but Chris, you know very well what I'm talking about. Yeah.
What was it like when you came? So during the summertime, you went and competed. Then you returned, I'm assuming, to Arizona State. What was it like to return to Arizona State as a Paralympian? And that was a gold. No, that wasn't a gold. That was a bronze medal, right?
No, in '88 we won the gold.
Oh, you won the gold in
We won the
88.
gold. Yeah, we beat Holland, and you know they give you the gold medal. They put it around your neck. They play the national anthem, and you fly home on a plane. And you know, I think I did a couple little newspaper articles, or you know, maybe in the Arizona State newspaper, but it by no means was, you know, like some NBA player coming back. Or so there was a few people that knew, but it was just more of a personal thing for me, an accomplishment. And I knew, you know, I knew what I'd done and who I'd done it against, but very few people back then even knew much about wheelchair basketball. And now in Utah, here in Salt Lake City, if I ask somebody, hey, have you ever heard of the Wheelchair Jazz? Have you ever seen wheelchair basketball? I would say pretty close, Chris, to half. So, oh yeah, I've seen that at a halftime or on TV. And so it's, you know, it's just a different world. You know, people look at you a little bit differently if you're in a wheelchair. But I wasn't like some celebrity coming back to Arizona State. But, yeah.
What did your dad say about that experience?
My dad loved it. My dad still to this day, and he's in his early 80s. One of the highlights of his life is having a good excuse to travel the world with my family, my siblings, my mom, and watch me compete in 4 games over the course of 16 years. And so, yeah, it's, I've made my dad proud in that way. And because I know he was kind of angry at my friend that shot me.
Right.
I know he didn't think I would ever play sports again. And I didn't know either. I definitely don't have high school wheelchair basketball, but I hope I've made my dad proud. Yeah.
I would imagine that was in some ways like representative of your recovery, even though, you know, you'd left the hospital, you'd started playing ball, but this was like reaching that top point. It's like, oh, he's okay now. I don't need to worry about him. Was that some of the thought too?
I think so. I think I kind of knew that I had reached the top level of wheelchair sports, you know, a gold medal. And it would kind of, as my life's evolved, you know, through my sports, then you start sharing your experiences and you start enjoying recruiting new people to play or coaching or teaching. So I think it's a natural evolution of an athlete, especially a sport like wheelchair basketball that's given so much to me. It literally put my life back together. So I have this desire to give back. And, you know, we started the Utah Wheelin' Jazz in 1990, and here we are 30 years later, still going strong, top 10. So I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish to help people like me have an opportunity like I had.
I'm imagining that it really is the love of the game.
Yeah.
As well. Is that what it felt like then and what it continues to feel like, and also what you're sharing with the new people who come on board as the coach?
Yeah, you know, it's the love of the game, but it's the love of what the game does for people, especially people that are disabled, that don't even know if they can get dressed or drive a car or get married or have a job. But when they can play basketball and they can interact with another mentor that shows them how to use hand controls, or I'm married and I have kids, I think they catch a vision. So it's sports, but I think in wheelchair sports, it's even a little bit more. At least it was for me.
Is that what helped you is that what helped you to kind of fill out the rest of your life in some ways, to have that confidence?
Yep.
to start a family, to go out and create a profession, these kinds of things?
Oh, yeah.
When did all that happen?
Yeah. So I was in the hospital, went through, intensive care, couple months in rehab, back when insurance would pay for a couple months in rehab. And a guy named Mike Johnson lives here in Utah, double amputee, lost his legs in Vietnam, came to the hospital and visited me. We played table tennis. He talked about his wife and kids. My mind said, wait a minute, how did he get here? And I realized he drove there. So I didn't know anybody in a wheelchair. Like before my accident, I'd see people in the mall, but I didn't know. And so I met Mike and knew about him and his life. And he was an inspiration, a mentor to me. Brought me out to play basketball. He'd pick me up every Thursday night. We'd drive to Salt Lake. We'd practice. We'd go through the drive-through on the way home. Here he's a 30-year-old and I'm a 16-year-old. And it just meant everything to me. And I'm still close to Mike to this day. And so that's what it meant to me. And then to get on an airplane and travel and play teams from other states. And so anyway, you can probably sense my passion for it, but I just enjoy giving it to the next generation.
Well, it's an entirely different community than what you experienced in the hospital, I would imagine. I mean, for me, it was entirely different. I was in the hospital and I couldn't wait to get out of the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I got into sport, then it was like, oh, we have a shared purpose, a shared motivation, a shared desire to get into this sport and go do something and push yourself as far as you want. And you're like, oh, well, this is the same. I'm the same person and they're the same people and they're pushing me because they're better than I am. And
yeah. And I mean, skiing or racing, Chris, is, a little bit more of an individual thing, but you're still seeing other people that are inspiring you. And I just know that I needed those mentors, and I just did. And, I know you've been an amazing mentor to so many people. In fact, I should interview you on a podcast, Chris. Forget talking about me. Let's talk about you. But it's you and I definitely, our worlds were changed. We left the hospital, and I will admit, I'm like, I'm not going to hang out with disabled people. There was a little bit of that in me. Sure. I'll admit, I'm too cool, And I did have my high school friends. And I mean, it's not like I just hung out with disabled people, but I had that little niche of wheelchair friends that understood that side of my world. I was still my dad and mom's kid and brother and sister's brother and all that. But I had this little world over here that even my high school buddies hardly knew anything about. And so, yeah.
Did any of them come and jump in a chair and play basketball with you?
Oh, yeah. I'd take them bowling, or we'd do a wheelchair basketball assembly at the high school, and we'd put all the students and teachers in wheelchairs and play against them. And yeah, so they got a little bit of a glimpse of it, but not deep into the world of a wheelchair. You and I both know that there's a whole lot to being in a wheelchair besides pushing from point A to point B. There's a whole lot more, but that's what people see. And so that's reality.
That is definitely reality. So you were, 15 years old. That's a tough time for a lot of people in their lives. And obviously it was a little bit tougher for you. Yeah. When did you get, because you talk about having a family. One of the biggest concerns is, am I ever going to get a date? You jumped like way ahead to a family.
Yeah. Yeah. I had all those thoughts. My girlfriend dumped me right after I got hurt. You wonder if girls ever like you again. And I remember the time I got the guts up to go to a school dance, and a girl asked me to dance. She didn't know what to do. And then she sat on my lap, and that was good. And so it was a constant gradual thing of, oh, maybe girls can see past my chair. But I still lacked confidence. And then you gain confidence, and then, oh, somebody will let me get serious with them. And then, eventually you get married and have kids. It's a whole process. But that was a huge part of being 15 years old. It wasn't just sports. It was relationships, and it was girls, and it was driving cars and going to school and being able to get through a door and upstairs. And it was a different world in the 1970s than it is 50 years later. Whole different world.
Well, I mean, it's a different world, but probably the way that it's interpreted is the same, because I remember thinking that the sport part of it
Yeah.
was something that I could control.
Yeah.
I could gain confidence in what I could do as an athlete. But the other side of it is how do people see me?
Yeah.
And
It's hard to
I
know.
had this side that I'm like, hey, look at this, I can do some stuff. But the other side, that's a lot harder challenge, I think, in a lot of ways, to try to hope that people see beyond the wheelchair to see you. When did that, I mean, did you end up getting married pretty early, pretty young, or?
I was in college,
Okay.
but I gained confidence slowly.
Mhm.
I started to pick my head up and I'd roll down a hallway at school. I mean, I was a student body president, so it made it a little easier, but I would roll down there and people would look at me and
Hold
I,
on. You just said you were student body president. So we're talking about confidence. We're talking about the way that people see you.
oh yeah,
They
but
must have seen you fairly favorably if you were the student body president. I mean, were
well,
you the cool guy on
no,
campus? Is this what's happening, Mike?
no, I was probably the guy that they felt bad for that was in the wheelchair and they voted for me. I actually got shot when I was the student body president in junior high. And then I was
Okay.
a student body president in high school. But I knew people and they knew me and my story was, fairly well known around the community. But I gained confidence over the course of a handful of years. If I went out in public, I would literally, if somebody looked at me, I didn't have weird thoughts. I just let them look at me and I thought maybe they're curious. Maybe they appreciate and respect that I'm out smiling and shopping and out and around and not moping around. I'm doing something. And so I didn't assume that people had all these weird thoughts, even though I'm sure there were plenty that had some uncertainties about what to say to me or how to look at me. But I've never let the world make me angry in that way. And I'm thankful for that. That's been a big blessing for me.
It is funny that you say that. I just went for a bike ride before we got on here. And so often, the bike is that like street luge kind of thing that you're basically like lying down pedaling. And I get some of the strangest looks. And it really is, it's like I'm on television kind of thing, that there's no actual interaction between us, but I get that look of just like, what is that?
Yeah. And you get like thumbs up, like you're cool to be out here, and other people look at you and then look away, and others look right at you like, hey man, you're awesome. So we don't know, but I do believe you're possibly inspiring some people. And I would hope there's not that many people that are looking thinking that dude's weird. I doubt there's people thinking that, but we sometimes think they're thinking that.
Well, I think it's different enough that, to your point, it really is about the curiosity.
Yeah.
And I think they get stuck in that curiosity of like, what is that? And they get stuck staring, trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah. Do they ever roll down the window and say, dude, what are you doing? Do you ever get asked? People
I've
ask,
never had that and this has happened, I think, twice, and both in New York City, where I've had kids just laugh at me. And I'm like, okay, that's not exactly what I was going for, but okay, that's cool.
Yeah, they probably don't even know you're in a wheelchair. They probably think you're some able-bodied guy with skinny legs and you're just out for a ride, Who knows?
Working hard. So
yeah.
So
okay.
you got married when you were in college?
Yes, in college.
And did your wife go to ASU as well, or?
No. I went to BYU, Brigham Young University, before I went to ASU. So it was in that period right through there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got married, went to Arizona State, then I went and lived in California, started having kids, and back in Utah, and been here ever since. So, I mean, there's a whole lot more to these stories, but yeah, it's been a good journey for sure. And now empty nesters, grandkids, and life's been good.
5 kids 3 grandkids.
Yeah, you met one of my daughters.
I
Yes.
just did right beforehand. Yes.
Anna. Yes.
That's, I mean, you look at 4 Paralympic medals, 2 world championships, that kind of thing. I think that 5 kids and 3 grandkids, that
Yeah.
rivals any of the medals that you have.
Oh, totally. Yes. Right over there in my safe, right there are my medals.
In your safe. Wow.
My safe, Chris, you gotta, and then right over through that door over there is my family and my life when I'm not doing these kind of things. And so, yes, those things are cool, and medals and all that, but it's relationships and it's memories, and it's that stuff ultimately that makes you a whole complete person, beyond when the playing days are over, so to speak. Yeah.
And that happens quickly, but I have to go back to that safe. That looks like a really big safe, Mike.
Yes.
We were talking about 6 medals there. How many
No,
medals do you have in
I
that thing?
think there's guns in there. I think there's probably some silver coins in there, Chris. There's a picture of my number, retired wheelchair basketball, number 12, the Wheeling. Anyway, yeah. So you're right. A lot of the picture over there, that's actually playing. Sorry, my camera. That's playing in Sydney. So you can probably see that strap around my belly. It kind of like artificial abdominal muscles. But anyway, yeah. So I do have a safe. Yes.
You do have a safe. Okay, that's good. Well, it's interesting. On my ski, I have a seat that's made by Aspen Seating, and Joe Buganic calls the strap that comes around, he calls it the 6-pack.
Yeah.
So that's my 6-pack.
Yep. Gotta have a 6-pack.
Yeah, I have a 6-pack. I just unfortunately leave it with the ski and end up with a little bit with the keg afterwards, I guess, leave the 6-pack.
Well, you look in good shape, by the way. I'm impressed.
Oh, I don't know. You do too. It's one of those.
I'm not going to point this camera down any lower. You can just look at my beard, my shoulders. No, it's you look good. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, it is. It's a daily commitment. And I said to somebody at one point, actually, I said it in front of a group, that I don't really have the luxury of getting out of shape.
Yeah.
We notice it so much more.
Yeah.
Just trying to lift ourselves from one place to the other.
Yeah.
That's a challenge. I don't think I ever thought that doing a transfer would be something that I really had to think about. And as you get older, you go, yeah, I need to maintain some strength and try to maintain some fitness, that strength to weight ratio.
Our shoulders are like our legs. So we have to, and if we lose one of them, we're in big trouble. If somebody's got 4 limbs and they lose a leg, they still function. But you and I, our shoulders are our engines. And so, yes, we have to transfer into cars and onto couches and into beds and get dressed and all the stuff that people probably don't want to hear about right now, but it's real and it's part of life. And yeah.
It is. What about, when did you start speaking? Because you made your living. I mean, you did a variety of different things because you're a financial planner as well, right?
Yeah, I was in that world, finance, and then I worked in healthcare administration for a big company in Utah. But since like 2000, I mean, even before it was schools and all that stuff, but for the last 20 years, airplanes and corporate events, and still get on Zoom calls and I speak it. I love it. I share my story. I sell a few books and then I get out of town before they figure me out. But I do love sharing my story and helping people. I feel like that helps me know I've come full circle. When I can share my feelings, I can share my real feelings. Yeah.
Was that a challenge at some point, as you were, I mean, you had your injury when you were a teenager. You're not necessarily the most transparent, seeking to be honest and vulnerable as a teenager.
Right.
But getting to that level of honesty, both with a crowd, but even with yourself, was that a challenge for you?
It was. You always want to keep your image, and I have a good attitude, but I learned when I shared real feelings of laying in a hospital bed, depressed or thinking bad thoughts, or when you start sharing some of those really vulnerable, bad moments, I think people appreciate that and they can relate to it. They don't have a wheelchair, and I don't need to lecture them. They can take a story I tell, and they can attach it to their own life, and I think it helps them kind of know how I overcame it. But if I just act like, oh, I got shot and I'm fine, no, it took a while. It's like a movie. It starts good, it goes low, and then it ends good. And that's kind of, I hope, what's happening in my life. Yeah.
No, I'm right there with you. And the whole idea is creating that connection. And I've always felt that in order to create that connection, in order to allow somebody to drop themselves into your life, into what you've been able to do, you have to achieve a level of honesty and a level of transparency that is uncomfortable, but you have to allow them to interpret what's going on through their own lens, as opposed to telling them what they're supposed to see. And that's the biggest challenge, because then you lose control, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, very much so, because if your only success, if that's all you've ever known and you didn't have to fight for it or earn it, then it seems easy. I don't know about you, but I respect people that lost something and regained it. So when I'm speaking to an audience and I don't know them, but I know them, I know they have pain. And I know if they can change and figure it out and try and all those words, if they can do these things, to me, I really respect those kinds of people that are there to try to better themselves. And so I'm just an avenue to share my story and let them learn. And of course, you have to make them laugh and cry. Yes, I've absolutely loved sharing my experiences and helping other people.
What's that feeling like, being on stage for you? I was petrified as a kid of talking in front of people. Now I do it all the time.
Yeah.
There's something, I mean, there's something in me that, like, being on stage is like being an athlete to a certain extent, like being in the starting gate, at the starting line kind of thing.
Yeah.
What does it feel like for you?
I still get butterflies. I think that's good. I still know I'm going to go out to something, but I don't know if I'll play my best game. I don't know, but I've done it so many times. I have confidence that I'll help some people. I don't get, it's not about me as much anymore. You know, it used to be like, let me see, I've got to tell it perfect. I've got to make them laugh. I got to tell them I'm awesome. The introduction has to be perfect. No, now I share my heart. I think of them. I'm trying to speak to a person that might be hurt, just like I was, in other ways. And then I let them clap for me. I take that as a compliment. I sell a few books in the back of the room, and I get out of town before they figure me out. You know, that's so, yeah, Chris, you know, it is kind of like a game. You go out there and it's fun and it's exhilarating, but I don't always know exactly how it's going to go that day.
You said that you still get nervous. Do you have any tricks for getting over the nerves?
I try to be prepared, just like on this call, we made sure the camera was working. I try to know my audience a little bit. I try to show up in advance, get the tech stuff ready, and I mentally try to get myself. Sometimes I'll say a little prayer. So I just do a few things that get me in the right place going out on stage to really be real. That's my thing. Because when you've told a story so many times, to me, I want to be real. And that's my hopes, that I'm really being as real as I can remember being real. Like, how did I really feel 45 years ago? And I try to be real.
And that is one of the challenges, because oftentimes I've heard that the way that you tell the story is the way that it happened, as opposed to sometimes the other way, right? That
yes,
it happened and you have to tell the story from that. And it's like, you tell the story and that ultimately ends up getting to be how it happened.
I know. Yeah, the kid that shot me. So he went to prison for other things. And we
Oh.
connected, maybe 10 years ago, went to lunch and we were talking and we're friends. And he remembered some situations totally different than how I told the story for the last 20 years. And I'm just like, oh, well, I guess it is what it is. I mean, yes, I got shot. Yes, I got shot by him, but some of the details were not what he remembered. So I found that kind of amusing. Yeah.
But he was one of your friends, right? I mean, this isn't sort of like a drive-by thing or something like that.
Oh, no, he was my neighbor, my friend, my football teammate. Yeah.
Did some of his difficulties later in life come as a result of accidentally shooting you?
I assume so. He had a lot of issues and challenges with his father. They did move away. He did start robbing banks. He ended
Wow.
up in federal prison like for 20 years. And then when he got out, we connected. And, we've been to dinner and breakfast a few times, but this didn't just happen to me. This happened to him and to his future. And we both take different experience, different things from that identical moment. And I don't know which is better. Maybe those of you that are listening, would you rather be the guy that shot your friend or would you rather be the guy that got shot? I don't know. Something to
Yeah.
think about. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things that you saw this, I'm sure, in the hospital as well, is that everybody who's coming to visit you it feels this responsibility to make everything okay. And there's really nothing that they can do. Whereas you, as the person lying in the bed, have a sense of power and autonomy in that you're the only one who really knows sort of the next step and what you're able to do. Whereas like your friend, like, how do you give yourself permission
Yeah.
to move forward? That's a really hard question. And obviously you can't necessarily answer it, but
No, I mean, he had his journey. I had mine. He knew that I had forgiven him. He came to the hospital after he had told everybody I shot myself. And then he gave me a book and we had that moment. And I think he knew. Then we were in school a while before. So he knew that I didn't hold this grudge, but he carried this burden. He shot the athlete, he shot the student body president, and blah, blah, blah. He used his dad's police gun, and it was a thing. And a lot of times people would come to help me, Chris, and they would help me, but I sometimes think maybe I helped them too. I kind of helped them. I hope I helped them by letting them see my situation and gain, some courage to go try to overcome their disability or I like to say their bullet, because the bullet I got shot with spent 2 years in me. And I tell people to find their bullet, but yes, speaking and sharing stories and helping people is really, for me, what has come full circle in my life. Yeah.
it is, because you're touching on a bunch of things there that are really interesting. I feel like back to lying in the hospital bed, that people feel this responsibility to make you feel better, but then you can see just how uncomfortable they are.
Yeah.
So as the guy lying in the bed, then you're like, it's going to be okay. And they think they're supposed to help you. And you end up telling them, no, don't worry, it's going to be okay. Really, because you don't want to be isolated,
Yeah.
right? If they can't handle you, then you're going to be alone. And so then the next step is then going and speaking,
Yeah.
where you're connecting with people and sharing a story that allows them to see some of the difficulties that they might have had along the way. So you're creating a sense of community. Did you ever start with that thought of like creating a community or how you might do it? Or it's like, hey, Mike, will you come speak? And, I know it started probably similar to me where
Yeah.
we'll pass the hat for you, or, or whatever, or something,
Sure. Yeah. Churches or schools. I was willing to share my story, but I didn't really know kind of like, why do they want to listen to my story? Well, you have a cool story. I'm like, oh, okay, you think so? And you build on that, and I learned, Chris, and I'm sure you have as well. And if people came to visit me and I was negative or whiny or complaining or blaming and didn't take personal responsibility, all those things are real. And they would listen and they would offer empathy, and they wouldn't come back because I didn't inspire them. They came and said, sorry, this happened to you. And I made them feel bad, and then they never came back. And so I felt a need to want to be optimistic and create the group around me, like you're saying, that if they went to McDonald's at lunchtime during school, they would take me with them, because I wasn't gonna be always sad. It's okay to be sad, but it may not build a bunch of people that want to hang around you too long. So I don't think I was faking it, but I had to figure out that I am grateful to be alive. I'm thankful. I really can look you in the eyes and say, I'm having a good day. And that became my nickname as a kid, was Happy Schlappi. And I didn't want to be crappy Schlappi for very long. So I got back to being just who I am.
How long did it take for your friends to be able to give you a hard time? Because there was probably the kid gloves thing at first, like, oh, no, we've got to be nice to this guy all the time. And then somebody, I'm sure, took the gloves off.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they decide to push you down some stairs or pull a prank on you or pull your will off, or yes, whatever they're going to do. But I'm like you, it tells me they're comfortable around me when they can joke with me, or like they would use the word walk. Oh, sorry, Mike. And I'm like, yeah, you really offended me. I can't believe you'd say the word walk around me. I didn't even think about it, but they're thinking about it. So we had to get past all of that stuff.
What are so 3 grandkids? How old are the grandkids?
Like 4, like 2, and like 1, something like that.
Okay. So they don't have a ton of, but I would imagine, what do they think of you? Because they've known you their whole lives, right? I mean, this is what kind of story do you think, like going to kindergarten, what kind of story are they going to tell about their grandfather?
I'll be interested to see. I had that perspective with my kids, and sometimes I was show and tell, and sometimes it's just like, well, I mean, I remember my son, when he brought me to show and tell in kindergarten, he realized, oh, not all other dads are in wheelchairs. He connected those dots, and I think my grandkids, as they grow up, this is just the only grandpa they knew, and he's just grandpa, and he uses wheels, and he can do most things that other people can do, and it's okay. I hope that's what it is. But I'm sure they'll know it's different. Different isn't bad. It's just different. And so, but it will be interesting to see as they get a little bit older.
As they get that transition, I was talking to a friend last night at an event, and she was saying that her kids are getting to that point where she goes to give the kid a kiss goodbye, and he's like, hold on, there are people watching. You can't do that. Don't embarrass me, Mom.
Yeah, I can. You'll be okay. Yeah.
Were your kids okay with that? They weren't like, hey, Dad, don't come to school,
I don't know. I maybe, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I hope it was maybe a cool thing.
Yeah.
Dad's in a wheelchair and he's pretty cool. But I hope, I don't know. This is what's so difficult, is we don't know. I mean, we got people watching me right now, Chris, and I have no idea what they're thinking about this guy. I don't know, but I hope that they can get a feel for my life and my story. And I wish I could hear their story. So whoever is watching in, thank you so much. It's kind of you.
It is exactly. And I would imagine that your kids thought that you were pretty cool, that you did that.
I think it is cool when you've spoken at their school, or they my dad's a gold medalist, he's written a book. So those things he drives with, like my kids would drive with my hand controls, and they thought that was cool. So I think there's cool things about it. But I think when they're in elementary school, I don't know. I don't really know what they're thinking. I'm going to have to ask them that sometime.
Well, Mike, we might have kept you long enough
Thank you.
that people can figure you out. And, I don't think you have anything to worry about. I don't think you have to get out of town too quickly. I think if they're going to figure you out, they're going to figure you're all right.
They know where to find me. Yeah, I might be in the safe. I'm right back here. Yeah.
But thank you. Thank you for joining us. It's awesome to connect.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chris.
Totally appreciate it. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. The greatest gift you can give us is to tell your friends. Tell your friends to tune in. Tell them you had a great time. We'll have a great guest next week as well. And this will be a traditional podcast. So if you can follow us, if you can like us, we'll continue to bring you great content, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks a lot. Take care.